All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Matt, coming at you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I have been with Veritus for three and a half years or so. Prior to coming to Veritus, I was in a variety of different roles, leadership roles in major gift fundraising, leading the major gifts team at the Greater Twin Cities United Way at one point, where I was a client of Veritus, and so it's pretty cool to be on this side of things and kind of doing this thing. So really happy to be here. And Laura, over to you.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Lang. I joined Veritas about a year ago. And prior to that, I had a almost 30-year career working for a variety of nonprofits, a variety of types of missions and sizes of organizations, and everything from a development coordinator all the way up to VP and then CEO. So hopefully that helps me relate to all of you quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to hearing your questions. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Laura and Matt. I know we are in store for some great insight from both of you today. And I'm just really thrilled that all of you made time to be here today during such a busy season. We're already in the throes of year end, and I know your days are so busy and full. So thank you for making time to be here. We're going to get to as many questions as we can today. As I mentioned, we had a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. So I'm going to start with those and then we'll move into the Q&A box. So Matt, we're going to start with you. I'm going to throw this question over to you, and it's a little bit lengthy, so hang in here with me. So this question says, I am in the process of building a leadership giving program and have the following questions. What is the best metric to track success in leadership giving? And would it be retention rate, revenue, migration to major gifts, all of the above? What would we advise there? And the second part of that question is the best leadership giving strategy to work closely with the annual program and piggyback on their solicitations by creating a more customized package? Or is it proposal style customized solicitation created through like maybe partnering with your Marcoms team? I'll leave it there for those two, and then we'll go back to it if we have any more to add.
Yeah, so thinking leadership giving, thinking sort of that mid-level space, maybe right below where you have a major gift strategy for each donor on your caseload, you bigger numbers of donors, but still people you want to work with, yeah, on a more personal way. For metrics, certainly we use keep, lift, and move, right? So keep, so that's a retention metric. How many of your donors came back and gave again this year? Lift, what's the average gift size? Has that gone up? How does that impact your overall revenue? But really average gift size on those donors. Are you making an impact there? And then move, are you identifying those donors that would better fit in a major gift caseload, who would respond better to the more personalized, more bespoke plan that a major gift officer can bring to that relationship? And have you actually moved those folks to major gifts, made that warm handoff to a major gift officer so that that relationship can blossom in that caseload? So keep, lift, and move are really the key metrics when we think about leadership or mid-level giving. And that second question, we're talking about how to talk about solicitation, as we're and certainly there's a lot to be said there. And I think a lot of people are thinking about this right now as we're coming towards year end. But you want to have a really good idea of what they're getting in terms of solicitation via direct mail and marketing. You want to know what that communication looks like, and you probably want to keep that communication as planned to your caseload, and think about supplementing communications to your caseload sort of before that solicitation and following up after that solicitation has hit their inbox with a few key touches. So before that solicitation, consider like a gap statement, some articulation of the need, and let that go to to the caseload, so that they're thinking about the need and what's yet to come. You obviously have to ask yourself, have you shown that their last gifts made an impact? So, if it's November, we're looking at a year-end solicitation. You got to ask that question now. Make sure you have shared impact, and then the need, and then the solicitation hits at the timeline that it hits, and you know who normally gives at this time of year, and you know what gifts you're expecting to come in, and I would take maybe your tier A and start with your tier A folks who normally give this time of year, and follow up after that solicitation is hit, and maybe position yourself as a resource. Hey, my name is Matt, and I, just wanted to check in, and as you're making your giving decisions for this year, wanted to see what questions are coming up for you. There should be a letter that's arrived in your inbox, or will arrive soon. As you're reading through that, and yes, as you're making your giving decisions this year, I'd love to answer any questions that come up for you. Share how ways you can give that might be more convenient for you. Any of those things, consider me a resource, and add that touch on top of the direct mail solicitation that comes in.
Good. Thanks, Matt. Okay, let's go down to the next question. Laura, I'm going to start here with you. This is a really specific question about funding for National Endowment of the Arts. So, with the future of NEA funding highly in question, what might take its place as a marker of credibility or quality for donors?
That's a great question. I immediately think of impact. That's really the thing that donors want to see, is that your organization is making impact. And most importantly, they want to know how their gifts are making an impact. So kind of touching back on what Matt was saying, make sure that you are letting your donors know multiple times per year how their gifts are making an impact and that they're making a difference. And talk about the impact that your organization is making on the people that are served, or the animals, if that's the case. Organizations who talk about this often with donors and send them touch points that are showing them how they made a difference absolutely see better results. So that's the first place my mind goes to. But kind of more specifically to the point of the question, there are sites like Charity Navigator and GuideStar that rate charities based on a lot of different factors, and their ratings are increasingly used by donors. So that is one way to take a look at your score and make sure your profile is filled out well and robustly, and then use those, use the little widgets that they provide on your website or on your materials if you feel good about your rating. Other donors, and especially foundations or corporations that are well known in the community and have a high level of credibility, if they're giving to your organization, absolutely include them in donor lists. Ask them if they would provide a donor testimonial. Shout them out on social media. That can lend credibility locally and regionally or nationally, if you have those kind of donors. There are also accreditation assessments and courses through your state or local nonprofit council. So that's something to look into that can add an additional stamp of approval for a nonprofit. And then I think, transparency is a big piece of this too. Donors want to know. Some donors are really interested in your financials, in your 990s, in your annual report. So make sure you have a financial section on your website and make sure you're really transparent with all of those things so that your donors can access them and ask you questions about them, and make sure you're prepared to answer, or that you know who that you can refer them to in your organization to answer their financial questions. So that's where my mind went. Matt or Kendra, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I like what you said, Laura, about that third party validation. And that's one of those WIMADs that we talk about, in having your plan. It's great when you say you're awesome, and it's great when you had like an NEA, sort of a very clear, well recognized validation if they've offered funding. But any outside validation of what you're doing, whether it's a news story or, like you said, Laura, other foundations that have as rigorous a vetting process as NEA might have. Folks that say, yes, in fact, we do agree that this organization is doing good work and making an impact. Do feel free to share that. Either share that publicly if you can, social media and your marketing, or and consider sharing that one-on-one directly with your donors as well.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off what you just said, Matt, I think evaluation is critically important for all nonprofits. Some nonprofits don't have evaluation staff, but if you're writing grants, you are evaluating your programs in some way. But think about stepping your evaluation processes up. If you can hire an outside consultant to do some evaluation, that is real credibility that donors trust as well.
That's good. Really good advice there from both of you. Thank you. Okay, Matt, I'm going to come back to you because I think you talked about this a little bit in the first question, but can you talk more about in mid-level programs, how do you really partner with that direct mail program to lift that giving, especially at year end?
Yeah, we talked about some of the things that you can do to add on top of that direct mail plan. Um, what one thing that really requires is to know the direct mail plan. And so the early and often having conversations with your marketing team, with whoever's running that direct mail, with whatever that calendar is when it's being developed, so that you can overlay your personal communication on top of that. That's going to be critical to working with with your direct mail program, working with your marketing communications, especially during this heavy year-end giving season. Um, it's not too late if you haven't started planning yet, but I would recommend as soon as this call is done, getting into it if you haven't. But definitely, you want to know the timing so that you can have your own timing so that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing, and that everything you do sets that solicitation up for success and also presents yourself as their personal representative, their personal contact, their personal concierge for whatever their needs may be if they need that last minute stock transfer information on December 30th, making sure that you present yourself as a resource available to them.
That's good. And I think it might be worth saying, even though if folks are familiar with Veritus, if you're on this call and you've been on other Veritus calls or you've read any of our materials, you'll know that we absolutely advise not to pull your mid-level or even any of your managed donors out of the direct mail stream. I know there's sometimes a question about that shows up like, hey, we're managing these donors a little more closely. Should we pull them out of direct mail so that my communications are targeted to them? But we would say no, you should leave them in the direct mail stream for a lot of reasons. But think about how you've trained your donors to hear about information in your organization and what's happening in that regular touch point. And as Matt says, really building on what's going out to them rather than replacing what would go out to them through direct mail. So just mentioning that in case that's a nugget that you might have missed in prior Veritas calls, because it's really critical. And we've seen when those mid-level donors get pulled out, especially, there is a significant drop in what happens, even if they're in a managed caseload. They just need all of those regular touches to be in front of them. Okay, Laura, next question. I'm going to start with you here. Can you talk about what it looks like to grow a development department when you're really starting from a very small and mighty team of one? And there's probably not a one size fits all way to do this, but what have you seen and what have you done in your past?
I've definitely been in this position a few times before, so I can speak from my experience. First I would say make sure your stewardship of your current donors is airtight. I think Matt said this earlier, think early and often. It really does make a big difference. So that just sets the foundation for an increase of fundraising so that you can grow your development department. So I'd say the second one is to really, as quickly as you can, build two-way relationships with every single board member and educate those board members on their fundraising responsibilities and how they can help, specific ways they can help. really work to build trust with them and show them that it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be scary. There are lots of different things within the cultivation, solicitation, stewardship cycle that they can participate in, that isn't about the ask. And those are all helpful. Lending that credibility and leveraging their networks is critically important. Um, so that, again, it's all about working to build your revenue to a place where you can bring on additional staff. I would also make sure, if you don't already have one, build a development committee of your board and seek out members who are actually willing and motivated to use their networks and to fundraise for you. I can't tell you how many development committees I have inherited or even built myself in the past that once it really got down to it, they just were not comfortable. And so make sure you're educating them as well, like you are your board. And just, ask those questions up front when you're asking them to join the committee. Make sure that it's a real big yes and an excited yes, that they're interested in fundraising, including making asks and doing stewardship. And then, you do wear a lot of hats in a smaller nonprofit, and especially if you're a development team of one. So I would bring in some skilled volunteers to help with administrative tasks to free up your time. Obviously you don't want them in your database necessarily, but if you feel, like you have the capacity, you could also work with a university to get interns. And so these volunteers or interns can help you with a variety of things. They can merge letters, they can print them out, they can stand there at the printer waiting for, all of them to print and sending the envelopes through and postage and all that stuff. Getting your mailings ready for you to personalize a note on the letters and handwrite, your letters if you're a major gift donor, or at least tier A's if you're a mid-level donors. So all of that with an aim to increase your revenue quickly and significantly, bring in some additional resources for you to do some things that free you up to do more of the fundraising tasks. And then, once you see your revenue increasing, make the case for additional staff to steward and cultivate appropriately. I really did this in my last position, where I was a CEO with a startup nonprofit. So I really had to build a donor base from scratch and quickly. I went to local foundations and some regional foundations that I already had a relationship with from previous jobs. And I immediately went and asked for a meeting, sat down with them, told them about the organization that I was newly working with and launching, and got them excited about it, and then went through their grants process. And again, that can take a year with some foundations, and some foundations may be a little bit longer to go through their whole process. But there are some that you could go through the process in 6 months, and those are larger gifts, right? That you could bring in that would buy you some time to then really start working on your individual fundraising, your individual giving program, and build that over time, because you were able to kind of overlay some larger gifts that'll hold you for a while as you build.
Good. That's really good. It's not easy when you're starting with a small team of one to get that momentum going, right? So you can really see. And as you said, in nonprofits, regardless of the size of team, everyone's wearing a lot of hats. So that self-care piece and really, keeping an eye on your team is so important to make sure we're not burning out folks before we can even get to the momentum piece, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, so this is for both of you. Would love your thoughts. You both work with, many of our Veritus clients, and you've both been frontline fundraisers yourself and managed teams of frontline fundraisers. It's November 6th. We are in the heat of year-end giving. There's a lot going on. So I'd love for you to talk about the strategies that you're using or talking about with your clients to help them stay on top of their caseload and donor engagement work when this volume of everything is so high. There's events, there is giving, there's so much going on. Matt, why don't you jump in and we'll go to Laura.
Yeah, I mean, I think Laura covered a number of things just now about how you can leverage your board, leverage volunteers, leverage folks that are in your community, people that want to be a part of your work, and see what tasks you can accomplish with this one finger instead of all 10 of these, right? I think we talk a lot in Veritas about having a plan and saying like, all right, who are the donors I actually need to connect with at year end? Who are my year end givers, and who are the folks that have already given this year that I'm going to talk. I need to approach for a solicitation later. Like, how do you prioritize those interactions for the solicitations? Have you done, like we said before, have you shared impact from previous? Have you articulated the need? Are you asking on time and giving them the opportunity to respond to that need again this year? Are you thanking donors rapidly after those gifts come in? And so sort of prioritizing those thank you calls. Your donors are never wondering when they're going to hear from you next, except in between that time when they've sent their gift in and you haven't yet said thank you. And so make sure you're quick on thank yous. Make sure you know who your donors are that are giving at year end, and that you've set up their solicitations for success. And then anything else that you can do outside of that, you prioritize accordingly. And that's sort of that's how I would approach it. I think Laura, you mentioned some great things before. I'd love to hear this as well.
Yeah, to add on to what you're saying, I mean, planning ahead is the absolute best way to manage things at year end, like Matt was saying. And I would add, make sure you have a solid new donor stewardship plan in place. You get a lot of new donors at year end. There are some things going on in the country and the world right now that are motivating people to give in larger volumes than maybe in past year end periods, or at least recent past. So you may be really seeing a lot of influx of gifts. So make sure you have a strategy in place to welcome those donors and maintain them, right? You want to keep those donors after they make that first gift. And then, use those volunteers and especially your board members to help you write handwritten thank you notes or make thank you calls. And then I think, a creative idea, and this would require planning ahead again, but if you have a slow period, and I know slow periods in nonprofits are kind of a joke, but if during the summer, many nonprofits do see a lower volume of giving. So use that time, A, to plan and make sure you have a solid strategy in place for year end, but B, handwrite some kind of pre-handwrite some thank you cards, and so that you can have them on hand. You wouldn't want to use a pre-written thank you card necessarily with your top donors. But your tier C's, those, if they're written well and, sincerely, you could just, write the address on them and put a stamp, and that takes a whole lot less time. I will say I have a client right now who works for a food bank, a mid-level client, and their donations are just going berserk right now. So much volume that they are having a real hard time staying on top of it. And this client used to be the gift processor and database manager. So they're pulling that person in to help process gifts because their volume is more than double what it normally is. And so his boss said that he really needs to prioritize gift processing because their executive director is actually using the real-time gift data to make food purchasing decisions so that they can serve people who are, without their SNAP benefits. So that's a real critical mission component. And so I recommended that he carve out an hour a day. Out of the 8 hours, 7 hours need to be spent on gift processing, but carve out an hour and really leverage that hour. Make sure you are staying on top of those thank yous, and that you are able to personalize your top tiers of the appeals that are going out. And I recommended they have an appeal going out right before Thanksgiving. So I said, start now, start that personalization of your top tier A and maybe your top Bs start that now so that you won't, try to cram it all into a few days right before the mailing goes out. That's not doable right now. So that's maybe the most extreme example that I've heard of trying to manage a caseload, during this high volume of time. But he's um, he's got the organizational skills and the motivation to do it. So I'm excited to see what he's able to
That's
get
good.
done.
One other thing I would add, just if, especially if you lead a team, but even if you don't lead a team, I think really getting honest with your calendar and trying to say no or not right now to some things is
Yes.
really critical. If you lead a team, canceling some meetings, right, that may not be as productive during the season is one of the best gifts you can give to your team. So if you have weekly team meetings, can they go to every other week? Can you meet by email? Is there something you can do to really free up that time for your team or for yourself? If you have projects that are, can be pushed to January and you can really, again, free up your time or your team's time to focus on those donor interactions to say thank you quickly to get those, new donors into your communication stream. All of those pieces that are so critical for not only, maintaining your current donor relationships for that donor retention as well. So, and to protect your team, right? We all know that this is a key burnout season for nonprofit fundraisers, and you want to do everything that you can to, protect your team. If you have a board member who would love to bring in lunch for your team on a really busy day, that's a great way to have the board member, have a meaningful opportunity to support your team, but also, just provide a little extra perk. So all those little things add up and mean a lot. So I just
Yeah,
add that to you to say, hey, how can I really look at the calendar and take some things off? Right, right. When we're adding so much, what can we take off?
for sure. That's important. And then if you're a leader, walk around and check on your staff
Yeah.
a lot, daily at least, and ask them how they're doing. If they say they're fine and they look like they're exhausted, encourage them, or say, let's take a walk outside, take a breath, something.
Yes.
And just make sure they're okay.
Good. It's good. Okay, let's move into some questions that are coming in through the Q&A box. And again, keep them coming. We'll get to as many as we can today during our allotted time. But let's start here. And Matt, I'm going to start here with you. This question says, I'm interviewing at an organization whose gift officers are shocked and discouraged about how hard it can be to get visits with donors. I know Veritas has always talked about other options to both communicate and build a relationship without in-person visits. What are some of Veritas' best ideas?
Yeah, I love this because some donors are busy and don't have time to go and spend 90 minutes at breakfast with you before the workday starts, or just prefer to have a different style of communication. So we recommend meaningful connections as a metric as opposed to in-person visits. And so one of your first things you want to learn about your donors is how they want to hear about the difference they're making, what's their communication preference, and how do they want to have a relationship with you? How do they want to be treated, right? That platinum rule, treat others as they want to be treated. And so meaningful connections, right? Sometimes that is in-person meetings, sometimes it's Zoom, sometimes it's phone. Uh, you know, you, anytime that you get some good internet, you can have these over text or email too, if that's what the donor really wants. You got to be thoughtful. You got to ask a lot of questions over email. You got to be real inquisitive always. And when you have a connection that treats the donor like they want to be treated, you can still learn a lot about them. You can still find ways to personalize your future touches based on that. You can understand their passions and interests. You can certainly develop good plans for your donors that bring them closer to the work in ways that they care a lot about, even if they don't take a lot of time to meet with you. And so meaningful connections in ways that the donors want to communicate, and always be asking to learn a little bit more, always be discovering a little bit more, and especially when you don't have that in-person time, you do have to be a little bit more intentional about discovery and about being curious. but you're curious anyways about them. And I would encourage meaningful connections with each one of your donors throughout the year.
Good. That's really good. Okay, let's see here. Laura, we'll start here with you. This question is just a little bit about internal dynamics in an organization. So, my question is about processes. Any tips for navigating the bureaucratic processes that are necessary when establishing new funds?
Well, let's see. I'm going to assume this, like you said, is about internal processes. Make sure you have a really good relationship with your finance department, I'd say is number one. And hopefully your boss, the head of development, also has a really good working relationship with the head of finance. Build that relationship over time, make sure there's a lot of trust there, intentionally work on that. There are processes that have to be navigated because of compliance issues and just good stewardship of funds. So I think, that's my best advice is to, make sure that you have a good relationship and a good open communication stream with them. I'm sure that there are some efficiencies that can be built in. But I'm not, it's been so long since I've had to do this. They're just not coming to the top of my mind.
Yeah.
I would make sure, and I think that's spot on. I think relationships is number one, Laura. I would add that when you're talking about establishing new funds, I think there can be some internal friction for a good reason around, is the juice worth the squeeze on this? Is this the right thing to do for the organization right now? Or is this something we're only doing because this donor absolutely, is there some other option that we can talk to the donor about? And I would be, part of being in a relationship with your internal stakeholders there is being open to having that dialogue.
That is, yeah,
Really
so
good.
important. And I would add to that, make sure you have good boundaries, that you know how to set and hold boundaries as a fundraiser, and that you are able to communicate well with the donor when the answer is no. We're not able to do that, but here is what we can do. Have a plan in place, and really nuance your message back to that donor. And
Good.
and absolutely never overpromise a donor. Never say yes to something like this before you have checked with your boss and finance.
Good advice from both of you. Thank you. Okay, this is about monthly donors. Let's start here with you, Matt, and if you have anything to add, Laura. When you're thinking about the monthly donors that you've had in your donor pool, what are some creative ways that you found to thank them, make them feel like they're a part of the community? Sometimes those monthly donors, they get in the system and then they don't get the same kinds of touches as some of our other donors. So anything that you've seen, and if those of you on the call have some creative ideas you want to add in the chat, please do that as well.
I love that. I love monthly donors so much. Because yeah, just like you said, they've made the decision once and they're going to continue giving until their credit card expires or whatever. When we talk about building plans for our donors and saying like, how can I keep these donors engaged throughout the year over 12 months? Oftentimes we talk about planning and anchoring that plan on when am I going to ask, and then what do I have to do before that ask, and then what I have to do immediately after the ask, and then fill in the gaps from there. Well, with a monthly donor, you don't have that anchor. And so you can take that same approach, but anchor on some really creative thank you that's special to that donor. And like when throughout the year, and probably not in December, when throughout the year would be a great time to put together a really special stewardship piece that's personalized and shows their specific impact with their giving. Maybe even, if it's a monthly gift of, some relatively small amount, a couple $100s a month, but they've been with you for a number of years, sharing the total they've given over their lifetime with the organization and talk about what that means in real terms in impacts. I mean, that can be a really powerful thing, but anchoring your plan on what's a really special thank you that I can do for my monthly donors. In the same way that you would anchor for those donors to give once or twice a year around when you make that big ask, I think is one way I'd approach that. Laura, any other thoughts you got?
Well, just maybe to piggyback on what you were already saying, at Veritus, we teach monthly touch points, and absolutely with monthly donors, they don't necessarily want an acknowledgement every month. So you're probably maybe sending them quarterly or a couple times a year. But as Matt was saying, like plan a whole, 12-month schedule of monthly touch points. Make sure you're, planning the things that Matt was saying within that plan. And then, I think that monthly donors are so helpful and beneficial in a specific way. So you might consider having one of those thank yous during the year come from either your VP of finance or from your CEO or from a board member saying, what it really means to the organization to have that steady level of funding that they can depend on every month would be really impactful. So speaking specifically to the impact of the type of gift they're giving, I think would go a long way also.
That's good. That's good. Okay, Laura, I'm going to start here with you. Again, we're talking about mid-level programs here. We are starting our mid-level segmentation. How should we make that initial outreach or introduction if these donors have previously only been in the direct mail stream?
That was such a great question. So we have white papers on our website and of course, our Veritus Group Academy training platforms really talk about this in detail. So I'd encourage you to look more into those resources after you get this quick answer. But so, after you have your mid-level group of donors, your caseload, and after you've tiered them A, B, and C, then you'll start with an introductory letter. And that letter will talk just a little bit about your role in the organization. And I think Matt used the word I love so much for a mid-level officer is I'm your concierge at this organization. I'm your contact, I'm your representative, or you can say, our CEO has asked me to be your representative at our organization. And so this is why, this is what I can do for you. Contact me if you have questions. I can help you with tax receipts if you need those, any questions that might come up for you anytime during the year. Here's my business card, here's my phone number, my email. Please contact me. I'd love to talk with you. And send that introductory letter out and then wait a week and try to contact that donor as a follow-up. Try to give them a call a week later and see if you can get them on the phone to kind of just further that conversation with the donor. Ask them about what motivates them to give to your organization, what they love about your organization, what types of programs they're most interested in, and very importantly, ask them how they want to be communicated with. It's a really key part of this because we teach that the donors that are most worth managing in a caseload are those that do want to hear from you often. They want that two-way relationship. And so you want them to give you permission to send them something each month, to keep them updated on your programs. So that's just the beginning of the introductory cycle that we teach. And it has 7 steps. So I won't go through all the steps today on this webinar, but that's how I would get started.
Really good. Really good. Okay, so you mentioned you kind of tiptoed into this area, so I'm going to piggyback. And we always get a question like this, and I'd love for us to just talk about it because I think the more we talk about it, the more it becomes the norm of the narrative. But we always get questions about donor fatigue. Is it real? What does it look like? How do we, dance around it if it is? And, what do we do to support our donors in the process and make them feel, communicated well with, but maybe not over communicated with? What does that look like in reality? I know you're both working with clients right now. So, what is donor fatigue? Is it real? And how do we think about it in from a Veritas perspective?
Yeah, there's a lot there, isn't there? I think, we can certainly feel like we are bothering our donors, and we can certainly feel like, well, they already gave this year. I don't want to present another funding opportunity to them. They're going to get offended. They're going to feel like, that. I think a couple of things to prevent donor fatigue is exactly what Laura mentioned earlier, which was like find out how they want to be communicated with and what motivates their giving and give them that in the way that they've asked for. Give them things that if they're interested in it, then it's not too much stuff. And if I think another thing that contributes to donor fatigue is not thinking that what they're doing makes a difference at all. Tell them how their gifts are making a difference. It's easy to get overwhelmed with the needs of the world. It's easy to get depressed and hopeless about all the things that are wrong, could go wrong, all the things we're scared about. And one of the services that we can provide to our donors, that you as fundraisers, one of the ministries you can have with your caseload is connect them directly with how their gift is making a difference, a real difference in the world, and show them in ways that they care about. And that is going to be so motivating. And Laura, you talked about a food bank that's going through an awful lot of emergency funding appeals. I'm working with some human services organizations as well, United Ways of Food Banks, right, there are some very real, very tangible uh, challenges that are there present today. People had food, they don't have food today. We need to get them food today. Because I don't know about you, but I like to eat every day, if possible. And donors want to know about that, even though you had a conversation with them three months ago about this other thing that was also going wrong, or this other need that was also increasing. Um, and so don't be afraid that donors will be overwhelmed by the need. Show them how what they are doing is making a tangible difference in the ways that they care about right now, and stay connected with that piece of it, and that both will increase their connection and generosity to the organization and will help the both of you feel like you're doing something important because you are.
That's really good. And I think, as fundraisers, we have a tendency to want to tell the story of the donor and what they may be thinking or feeling about anything about our organization. And it's important that we ask, right? And unless the donor is saying to you, stop sending me this, you shouldn't stop sending them this, right? You should, you want it to be, targeted to the parts of your work that they care most about, but also, we don't want to assume that they do or don't want to hear something. Like, what do we know about the donor that drives that communication? So that's really important. Thank you, Matt.
I just add a little piece to that. I just coached one of my clients. It was that same client actually at the food bank. And they were planning their mailing list for the November appeal. And they normally exclude donors who have given in September and October from that November appeal, and then they'll include them in the December appeal. And I really encouraged him to go ahead and include them because of what's happening with SNAP funding. And, the people they serve are really suffering right now. And so I like to use language like, ordinarily, we wouldn't come back to you this soon to ask for a gift. But I knew that as a loyal donor, you would want to know that the need is greater and what we're doing about it. And you would want the opportunity to understand what's happening and how you could be a part of it.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Okay, there's a lot of questions, as you can imagine, about kind of the stress around year end, especially if you didn't feel like you planned adequately, or if you're starting at an organization now and you haven't had the opportunity to really build that plan going into year end. So, in that case, what would you advise if you started with a new client today and they're like, man, I've got to really maximize this year in giving, but I don't yet have maybe the relationships with the donors on my caseload that I would like to have? How would you advise them to really maximize and prioritize the work that they can do from now through year end?
You want me to start with
Sure.
that one? So I do actually have a couple clients that are starting this month. So what we're looking at is if they have a caseload they're inheriting from a previous person in that position, then we'll look at, okay, who normally gives this time of year? Let's make sure we can personalize appeals or make a phone call after the appeal comes out to follow up. Um, we really want to prioritize who we're talking to. And if you don't have those relationships, you still want to have, tactics that you can use to increase the chances that they'll renew their gift. And then you'll want to prioritize your lapsed donors, or donors who haven't given as much this year yet as they did last year. Those kind of strategies of looking at your caseload and really targeting in on segments of it, I think, is really important. And then I would spend as much time as you possibly can on stewardship. Thanking, really overthinking donors who are giving, that are on your caseload, or even maybe donors that are giving a little bit below your caseload threshold. Really looking at those donors and making sure they're thanked well and personally. That's what I'm recommending. And some of my clients don't have caseloads yet, and so we're focusing on training and stewardship. And after the first of the year is a really good time to build a caseload on new donors and donors who are newly meeting the cumulative threshold to be on your caseload.
I
Perfect.
love that. I would build, I think, and that's I would build that you these aren't your donors, they're the organization. They're donors to the organization. So just because you don't know them yet doesn't mean that you can't give them a solicitation on a time that they're used to getting a solicitation. Doesn't mean you can't make a thank you call as your first touch to them and say, it's my like third day here, but I'm just so thrilled that people like you have been with the organization, for 15 years and you're just continuing your faithful giving. So thank you so much. It's really making me think that I've made the right decision to come and join this organization, join you guys over here at this organization. I think you can take some of, and I apologize if we put a lot of pressure on you to have a super robust year-end plan and you don't yet. There's still a little bit of time to whip that together, but your donors do want you to succeed. They're not, it's not an adversarial relationship. They're excited to give. They're excited to give into the need. They're excited to be a part of what you're doing and celebrate that, like Laura said.
Good. Really good. Okay, here's a really detailed question. We'll start here with you, Matt. After the first meeting with the president of a corporation, they are interested in our organization's work and have asked us to send them something to review and discuss. Do you have any advice on whether this document or what this document should contain? Should it be short and brief versus detailed? Should it be text versus pictures, etc.? They've asked for some information on reach, meaning the impact of your organization, how it represents, uh, who it touches, that kind of thing. So, how would you advise your clients to be thinking about that?
Ooh, that's a question I'd love to ask some follow-up questions about.
Yes, I know. Me too. Me too.
That was
Because
my first thought, is like, ask them what they want and
yeah,
prepare.
right. Yeah, I think that's the key thing is like what is it that you were discussing in that first meeting And what are the next step? Are you expecting that after you send this, they're going to make a giving decision out of the company, like the company funds, or the CEO as an individual is going to make a decision, a giving decision? Those decision making processes are different, so you want to have some understanding of what's going on. Um, the I think knowing having a deeper understanding of what they're looking for. I would not put in hours and hours and hours of work on a super detailed proposal if you don't know for sure that's what they're expecting. And so I think there's ways of sharing high level impact and sharing in broad strokes the need and the funding gap to meet that need. I think those are some appropriate things to send. But yeah, I think we'd want to know just a little bit more about what they're looking for, and so you can give them exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah. I would also add, when it comes to corporations, often they're really, they have a lot of nonprofits to choose from. They get a lot of requests from nonprofits. So in whatever you do send them, I would include what you can offer them if there is something you can offer them. If your organization uses volunteers and a team from their company or teams can come out and volunteer, that's a value add to that leader in the corporation. Or if you can provide, some marketing, sponsorship logos and that sort of thing, some marketing, blanking on the word, but you know what I'm talking about.
Impressions, yeah, you can give them
Impressions,
a
yeah,
boost, yeah.
visibility. Then that is something that oftentimes I have found in my experience that they really appreciate and that they pay attention to.
Good, good, good. Okay, I know we've still got several questions and we're going to run short on time. So I'm going to see if there's any that we can hit really quickly. I know, Laura, there was a quick question going back to you shared an organization that they could check.
I answered that
Oh, good. Perfect.
in
I'm
the
glad.
Q&A.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. So I just want to say thank you so much to everyone for joining us. I know we are running short on time and we always do in these sessions where we have lots of questions. Thank you for making time to be here. I've put in the chat just a quick link to our website where there are so many high value free resources there available to you. I've linked directly to our white papers, but you can dig around and see we've got blogs and a variety of other types of resources that might be helpful to you if your specific question did not get answered. Also, we will try to dig through the questions after today's webinar and see if we can reach back out to you individually to try to answer some of those questions as well. But I want to say to all of you, we are thinking of you. We are keeping you close in our hearts and thoughts as you are doing this really important work in your communities. Your missions are critical, and this work that we get to do every day is so important. And the work that you do, building a bridge between your donors and your important work, is so it's so rewarding. It's so hard. It is so perplexing at times. All the questions that you have are so normal. And, there's a lot of stress and a lot of reward and everything else in between that comes in this great work that we get to do. So I just want you to know that we at Veritus are really thinking of you and providing all the support that we can. If there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know. You'll be receiving a recording of today's session in the next day or so. You can certainly follow up there if you have any additional questions. If you'd love to engage with some training to get some additional tools in your tool belt, we've got some great things happening after the first of the year. So please take a look at those on our website as well. But I hope you have an incredible day, an incredible year end. I hope all your goals are blown out of the water and you come to the other side of it with great results. So thank you for being here today, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.